Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Caption Life, a podcast about how comics and pop culture impact life and society, and vice versa. Coming to you from the spaceship Domo, hovering high above Houston, Texas, I'm Kevin.
And from Indianapolis, I'm Sean. Before we get started with this episode, please hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and follow us on social media at Caption Life on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. And you can also find out more information in past episodes at thecaptionlife.com.
You know what, Sean? Since we are recording this for a pretty quick turnaround, I'm going to go ahead and plug the TikTok. If you're not following us on TikTok, Sean is doing some amazing things over there on TikTok, some hilarious videos, some great things. So please check out our TikTok. Hey, before we get started with our review of the new Marvel Studios film Eternals, we do have a couple of guests who are joining us to share their thoughts on the film as well. Please welcome Ellie. Please welcome Ellie Khanverdi from the I'm just butchering this. Please welcome Ellie Khanverdi from the Oh Shoot podcast and Ethan Simie from 15 Minutes of Marvel podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Ethan and Ellie, do you want to take a minute to just kind of introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, sure. I can take it. So I have a podcast called 15 Minutes of Marvel. Comes out every Wednesday and Friday, every single week, and basically covers the latest and greatest Marvel stuff in 15 minutes, or at least I try my very, very best. It's very hard to talk about it in 15 minutes. But yeah, it's fun. It gives me a good outlet to talk about Marvel, so my wife doesn't have to listen to it all the time. Yeah, you can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. And I am hyped. I am fired up to talk about Eternals. Can't wait. A lot of thoughts.
Have you ever thought about putting an asterisk on your show art, like that says episodes approximately 17 minutes long?
I know. I need to add like little caption boxes of like, this is a 26-minute episode. I'm so sorry.
we have a hard time staying on our time too.
Yeah,
it can be tough sometimes. You just have so much to say.
Yeah. It's tough. Maybe just reframe it to like 15-ish minutes.
Yeah, see, that's my introduction. My introduction used to be like, welcome to 15 Minutes of Marvel, the only podcast where you get 15 minins. And then I changed it to 15-ish minutes, and I don't feel so guilty anymore. I feel fine.
There you go.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm in the clear.
Awesome.
Well, I'll
Ellie,
go next.
what about you?
I am the host of Oh Shoot podcast. I talk all things film and TV. I've loved film for so many years, and I typically would just talk my friends' ears off with my movie knowledge or about plot details or character arcs and relationships. And I figured, hey, why not speak to a microphone and then let others listen if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm doing all the Marvel movies right now. It's been a big part of my life for so long. And I was like, this is the perfect way to start off a podcast. But yeah, I just love movies so much. And that's kind of why I started podcasts, just so I can talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. But awesome. I apologize for fumbling the title of your podcast, because since we are talking Marvel movies, I found it fitting to call it the Oh Snap podcast. And
very clever.
If I ever break up with Sean, I'm gonna start my own podcast called the Oh Snap podcast.
Yeah,
and
trademark
it's
that.
Be about the MCU.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Very
full
smart.
Support.
Very smart.
So let's talk about Eternals. I don't want to go first with my thoughts, but I will tell you that I just came out of the movie theater about 2 hours ago.
Wow, you're fresh. Yes,
fresh.
I love it.
I'm a teacher, so and with two kids, so my week stays busy. I would have loved to have been there like Thursday night. No spoilers, but I'm kind of glad I wasn't there Thursday night, because one of my issues is the hype that the movie got and our expectations for everything. But yeah, I just came from the theater. I took my 12-year-old and my 6-year-old. My 6-year-old was she was kind of scared in some parts of it, but overall she stood up at the end of the movie and said, "This is amazing." And we can get into why she said that really later on in the show. This is probably a good time to like say spoiler alert. Like if you haven't seen Marvel's Eternals, you should probably stop listening to us talk about it now.
Right. Good point.
So what's your guys' overall reaction? When did you see it? What's your overall reaction to the film?
Well,
go ahead.
Don't all go at once.
I did see it on Thursday. Luckily enough, I also have two small little girls that generally, like, when you go see movies at like 6 or 7 p.m. or whatever that might be, that's bedtime. That's like dinner time. That's tough. Luckily, my podcast gives me a really good excuse to say, I'm sorry, I have to be there. I don't have a choice. I have to be there. And so luckily I was able to get away. So I did see it on Thursday night in IMAX. It was I'd say like 75% full theater. I will start out by saying I did see 2 people walk out and leave in the third act. So that was very interesting to me. I mean, they had their coats, so I assume they're not coming back.
Right.
But the movie overall, I'll keep it really high level to start until we kind of get into maybe what works, what doesn't work, and some more details. I like to equate this movie to kind of like a fine wine. Like, it's now been 48 hours since I've seen it, and I like it more now than as soon as I got out of the theater. I like it way more now than as soon as I saw the last post-credit scene. I think personally, and this is just like my personal thought process on this is kind of the sacrificial lamb, if you will, of the future of Marvel moving forward. This is the movie that had to basically right the ship and say, no, we're actually going in this direction moving forward. Phase 4 has been very different, as we all have seen, and we are focused on dialogue. We are focused on character building. We are focused on things other than just having a villain at the top of the pyramid that we're worried about. That's my vibe. I love that. I love drama films. I love a good exposition heavy movie. So this was my jam. I think definitely some things didn't work, and it's got issues. It's a lot of story in a short movie, even though it's 2.5 hours. But I liked it. I liked it a lot, and I have to be as unapologetic as this film is with what it's trying to achieve. I got to stay true to myself, and I got to say I really like it a lot. I really did enjoy it.
We're gonna have some difference of opinions on some of this stuff. Seeing as how I just came from the theater and it's fresh in my mind, I don't think I'm there where you're at yet, Ethan.
Sure.
I mean, I definitely agree. I also saw it on Thursday. I went with a bunch of my friends. We basically took up an entire row. But I have to agree, like 48 hours later, I have so much more love for the movie. And I remember going in, and I know some of my friends were in agreement because we saw the reviews. We saw what the critics were saying. We saw all the negativity that was surrounding the movie. And I went in completely ignoring all of it because I knew right off the bat, like, it was pretty much BS. I definitely felt like it wouldn't reflect the movie at all. So I went in completely open-minded, and I walked out of there amazed. I was on the edge of my seat the entire movie. I was stressed. I was fully immersed. I don't know what people were saying, like, oh, it felt too long. I was stressed the entire time. I was fully hooked into the story, hooked into the characters. I was just constantly waiting, like, what's going to happen next? What choices are our heroes going to make? And I just kept waiting. And I was so excited the entire movie. And I remember walking out of there, we all just had so much to say about the movie. We all had like 5,000 thoughts running through our mind about the movie, about the mid-credits, about the post-credit scene, about characters, about the choices that they made. And now that I've had some time to sit on it, every single time I had a new thought, I would write it down because I was like, just in case I need to talk about it on this episode. And I just have so much appreciation for this movie. And I had a mutual message me later that night and was like, what are your rankings for all the Phase 4 movies so far? And I was like, Shang-Chi #1, of course. That's still one of my absolute favorite Phase 4 movies. And second, Eternals. Easy choice right there. And then in third place, I put Black Widow.
Right.
But yeah, no, that was a no-brainer.
Disagree with that ranking. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Right?
I
as
think
much
that's
as
how
I
it'd be
love
for
Black
me too.
Widow,
Yeah.
right? I feel like that's a general consensus for fans is that ranking because I'm like, I love Black Widow. I love the story. However, a little too late.
Yeah.
A little too late for her story, you know. If her movie came out a few years ago.
All right, Sean, what did you think? Oh, sorry.
No, that's it. Kind of like if it was a few years ago, I'm sure it would have been very different. But yeah.
Right.
What did you think about the movie, Sean?
Yeah. So
have you seen it twice yet?
I've not seen it twice yet.
Okay.
I haven't had that time yet. No, so I thought it was really good. So my overall feeling of it was it wasn't nearly as bad as what some of the early reviews was coming out to say, and I think we can all assume that those were just review bombings because of the context of the movie, similar to what we saw with Captain Marvel, right? But I would say that it's also not as much of a game changer as what some other people have said. So I would say it's more towards the high end, but I wouldn't say it's I think everyone's agreement here that it's not one of the best movies that's come out of the MCU or Phase 4 or anything like that. I thought it was really well done, and I think that Marvel was really smart to pick a intellectual property that is not well known throughout the popular generation or the general population. And because they pretty much, if you look at the comics for it, they pretty much took liberties with a lot of the characters that were written. And I think it worked really well because the story was really is really moving and it's a really good story. And you didn't really, make a whole lot of people upset for it because people were not really tied to those characters from the comics as much as they are with some of the other movies as well. So I think that they made a smart move with doing that. I think it's a really good movie and it's a really good story. There are some issues I have with it, which we'll go into that, a little bit later here. But I think overall it was a good movie. I don't think it was a game changer at all. And just in terms of the MCU or anything like that, I think it does change a little bit in terms of representation and what we've seen before, which we all know is going that direction anyways. And we're excited to see that. But it definitely wasn't nearly as bad as what other people were saying either. So I thought it was a good movie. It wasn't as great as I think, some people think it is. I just didn't think it was that great of a movie, but there were definitely a lot of great aspects of it. So.
And then I will say that I liked the movie. And I don't want to say like I liked the first 2/3 of it more than I liked the ending because I don't really have a big problem with any of it. I'm not the couple that left in the last act, Ethan.
Thank goodness.
Here's my thing. I loved the buildup of the film. Like it's a weird. It presents their situation in a weird light where you kind of sense that there's a bigger villain like in play, like they tease the deviants in the commercials and the stuff, and the way that the story unfolds, it's building, and you think that you kind of sense that there's something coming. I will tell you that when I spoke to Sean last week about what my theory was, I was wrong on who I thought that was going to be, and I can get into that in a few minutes, but I mean, I guess the reason why it feels so unsatisfying to me was really because it left me with more questions than answers. And I think you're right, Ethan, that they are investing in world building, that they have other stories to tell. And if they're going to do it in a realistic manner, they've got to. I mean, they've bled Iron Man dry. There's no point in trying to recreate lightning in a bottle that they found with Robert Downey Jr. and that character. So they've got to find it from a different source, and it's not Guardians of the Galaxy. It doesn't have the same it doesn't have the same comic flair that Guardians of the Galaxy had, and kind of was an unknown property. But this will be the version of those characters that people know. Like people like Sean mentioned that there's not a lot of fanboys out crying like this isn't the Kingo I know and love. That's because there's no such thing as the Kingo you know and love because nobody knows who Kingo is.
Right.
And I think at the end there were some things that I would re-edit so that you left it more on like so that the cliffhanger wasn't so like WTF.
Yeah.
because it seemed like it ended like the 5th episode of a Disney Plus show and you were going to get the 6th episode.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I guarantee you that we won't see the Eternals on film for another 3 years because that's just how long it takes, and they've got their stuff planned out. And so we will see everything else unfold in the Marvel universe in the meantime, but now you've got me invested in this and I want to know what happens. And you essentially made a giant commercial for the next thing.
Sure.
Right.
Kevin, can I ask you a question real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned it feels like a 5th episode of like a Disney Plus series, right?
Uh-huh.
Do you think that this and you don't have to answer this with any depth or anything, I don't care. Do you think that this movie with 10 brand new heroes and a brand new storyline and all this world building would have been better served as a 10 episode Disney Plus series? Do you feel like it would have been better? You would have connected more, you would have had more answers, or do you think the movie route was the right way to go?
The movie is the right way to go, because I would tell you that they would have given you more backstory in every single character, and they would have left you in the exact same place that they left you.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Like you wouldn't have gotten anything. You wouldn't have gotten
no
anything
additional
more.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
No.
Well, and I would also say
you would have gotten fluff.
Yeah, and I would also say that if it was a series, I feel like it would feel a lot more episodic than having a movie, because then each episode becomes a focus on a character, I feel like. And I feel like it would just kind of package them in or box them in, as opposed to seeing the different relationships that you kind of saw in the movie play out, that not as well as if you saw in the movie. So yeah, I would agree with Kevin that I think it was better as a movie in this route. So
what about you, Ellie?
I definitely agree that it would have been better as a movie, and I think they did it well. And writing wise, but I think directing wise was one of the crucial elements for a movie like this. And Chloe was the best choice.
Yeah.
Because she did absolutely incredible. A movie like this, if you have the wrong director, it could end up horribly.
Real bad.
All right, so just go around the table and talk about what you think the strong points of the film were, and we'll get to the not so strong points afterwards.
I think to Ellie's point, like Chloe Zhao directing this, I think was absolutely the right call, and it being such an intimate and a personal, emotional journey for 10 characters, which admittedly we lose sight of a lot of them. Kingo feels out of place come to the third act, and things like Sprite's backstory that we kind of dive into in the third act. She kind of, just like fluxes here and there, but in Chloe Zhao's directing style, she is personal, she is intimate, she is close, she knows how to portray that, and Nomadland is a perfect example of that, and that's why we all cared about that movie as much as we did, and why it won an Oscar. Because I think what the best strength that this movie features that's so different from any other Marvel movie is that when we have conversations between our heroes, our gods, we are there. We are right there. We're not watching them from a distance. We're not watching them while they're traveling to a different planet or while they're trying to accomplish something else or battle somebody else. We are watching Cersei and Gilgamesh, Athena and Gilgamesh have a very real conversation about her mental illness. And we are watching Cersei and Icarus have a very real conversation about their relationship with each other over 7,000 years. And that is what we are focused on at that point in time. So I think that is one of the best strengths that this movie brings to the table that no other Marvel film does bring. And I think that in and of itself is one of the most divisive reasons that people either like it or don't like it, is because we're not used to seeing that in Marvel. We're not used to just getting intimate moments that are minutes long where we're just understanding why people think the way they think. We're just used to seeing different things. But like, go Chloe Zhao, like do your thing and come back for the sequel and just own it. I love it.
I definitely agree. And that's another thing I'm like really looking forward to for sequels or any other movies that tie into this one. I'm like, please put Chloe somewhere on the team, like, because it really, I will like wholeheartedly believe that it is because of her directing that made this movie as amazing as it is. And so that's definitely a really strong point for me. And I definitely agree with Ethan about the characters, and we get to know them and their relationships with one another. We're right there when they're having conversations with one another, thinking about the time that they've had together, the time that they've had apart, the way that they've each individually grown ever since the first moment they stepped on Earth. And I mean, that's such an important aspect of movies, especially Marvel movies for me, is kind of honing in on the characters and the relationships with others. It's what I love. It's one of the things I love most. And another aspect of the movie that I really did enjoy were the visuals. I thought they were stunning. And there were some moments where I was just so into the scene because of the visuals that I think at one point my jaw nearly dropped because I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Right.
And I feel like the last time I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, wow. Like a wow moment with the visual effects was probably Doctor Strange. Because when it comes to visual effects, that is one of my favorite movies. And it's up there for me for that. And this movie like holds up, and that's another important aspect. And that's another element of a movie that really draws you in are the visuals, making it believable and really immersing you into the universe that it's in.
Yeah. The light in this movie is insane. The use of lighting and blocking and framing is absolutely incredible. That I don't think people are talking enough about that aspect, and that distinctive visual style that gives us an entire different level of humanity in our heroes, because we don't see that when Thor is on Asgard. We don't see that when Cap is fighting Thanos, and we don't see this incredible use of shadows and the sun setting and all of these different aspects that bring that extra level of humanity to what we're watching. Chef's kiss. Love to see it.
It's beautiful. So beautiful.
As far as the visuals and stuff go, the direction and storytelling, this movie seems kind of like the Marvel version of the restaurant that's a little too nice for you, or like the department store your parents didn't shop at because it was a little bit too expensive. Like no, we're gonna get our clothes from Target. We don't shop at Dillard's, or I don't know where you guys are from, but like that's what it is, right? So like I know that probably does rub some people the wrong way. It doesn't look like a normal Marvel movie, and that's to its credit, like because it was time to move on and do something different, and I think it'll take them in an interesting direction. The thing that I really loved, I appreciated in the storytelling, was the dual storytelling with the flashbacks and not revealing it like in linear fashion. I mean, it made the reveal. Okay, so we're 24 minutes into this podcast. Like, if you weren't paying attention to the spoiler alert before, I'm gonna start dropping bombs, so beware. But it made the reveal. It made the reveal of certain people's motivation, like all much more I want to say sweeter, but like
much more deserved.
There was much more dramatic flair to it. Like it gave it was what we could sense that it was building to. And I will tell you that when I talked to Sean a few days ago, I was convinced that what was going to happen in the movie was that the Celestials were going to want to destroy the Earth, and that the Eternals were going to have to decide if they were going to protect Earth or not. And I have this ongoing theory about like episodic procedural television shows, that like the most famous guest star is usually the killer of the week. And I was certain that it was Angelina Jolie. I was certain that she was going to be the villain at the end of the movie, because you just don't cast Angelina Jolie to be a member of the team. Okay. I mean, granted, she's technically Athena, the goddess of war in the film, but like to me in my head, I was like, no, there's no way, dude. She's bad. Okay. Like certain times in the movie, they kind of teased it, like, oh, what's going to happen? And that was a total red herring for what actually did happen, which you could kind of sense, like as the drama built closer and closer to it, you could kind of sense it coming. But the way that they unfolded all of that story with 7,000 years ago and 5,000 years ago, and then 1,500 years ago, and then 500 years ago, and 80 years ago, it made for the final reveal to be that much more dramatic.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's actually one of the best things about the film, I would say, is that it does a great job of using that sort of storytelling to its advantage, where as the story in present day is unfolding, it does that flashback to kind of not only tell you a little bit about how they got there, but a little bit more about each of the characters' background and a little bit of a reveal of who they are as well too. And so I really love that. I know that got really popular with Lost, and then you saw the CW picked that up and did that with Green Arrow, and they did a pretty good job of that. But I think this one, it was so natural in how they did it that it just made a lot of sense of them, presenting it that way for a number of reasons. Just like what you said, Kevin, it does set it up very well for that reveal where you didn't know, who was, and you didn't see it coming or wasn't expecting it until at the end. And so I think they did a great job of that. I think one of the highlights of this movie is explores the various kinds of relationships out there, not just, as couples or even, romantic. I love that they have a lot of platonic relationships in this that we see in the MCU in a few ways, but we haven't actually seen it to this level, especially with Gilgamesh and Thena, and how Gilgamesh pretty much takes care of Thena. And it's a very, I'm assuming platonic because you don't really, get any indication that they were romantically involved at all. But, just the fact that he took care of her like all those years, I love seeing that sort of commitment. It almost reminds you of, someone who's dedicated to a relationship, but is completely platonic. You saw how Kingo looked up to Icarus, a whole lot. And you just saw like so many levels of intertwined relationships, within the characters in so many levels. So I thought they did a great job of that. I think it's a lot more philosophical than what we've seen in the MCU. It does a really good job of kind of using the Celestial as a way to kind of do some like bigger thinking of like, what's my purpose and is this the right thing to do? And we see that a little bit in MCU, but I think this is on a grander scale because again, the movie is very much on a grander scale as well too, where it's more of a universe based, almost like Guardians of the Galaxy, like we've talked about before as well too. Obviously a great part of the movie that I think we all enjoy and love is the diversity and the representation, not just of, people of color, but we have our first, deaf actress and, we have our first deaf actress and deaf superhero in this, in the MCU, which we're probably going to get more later on with Echo coming in with Hawkeye and everything. Sure. But I think, it's just great to see a lot of different kinds of representation going on there as well too. Angelina Jolie as a non-leader and tortured character, I thought she did that very well. She was
amazing.
Like
she was good.
She was always in the spotlight with a lot of the movies, and this one she's in the spotlight because of who she is, but she just did a great job in this role as a non-leader, as a tortured character. I think she just did a fantastic job with that. So I was really impressed with her acting in this movie and being a supporting actress, as opposed to being, the main actress in the movie. And I think she just nailed it very well, and that she didn't take the spotlight away from the other characters, and still phenomenal job. So.
I'll add about the diversity because I had this conversation with Madden the other day. We talked about the way these characters looked in comics and how they changed them, and about why. And to me, I think that there are diversifying your roster of superheroes for Marvel is not done for diversity's sake. I think it serves two purposes. Number one is you do allow you to reach a wider audience. Okay. Every person that's watching the film can find a character that they identify with. There are a lot of, maybe there's a deaf child that says, oh, that character's like me, or a South Asian character like Kumail Nanjiani's character Kingo. So there's this great like noble idea behind it, but also like we would be naive to think that this wasn't also a decision about money making, because
Right.
As much as the vocal minority are like, I don't like these characters that don't look like my version of Icarus. He's supposed to have long blonde hair. And I don't like the gay stuff, which BT dubs, I love the gay stuff. That was one of the best relationships in the movie, because you touched on all the crisscrossing.
Yeah.
But here's the deal.
Facts.
It opens up different markets to your film. Like there may be a huge market in Pakistan where there's never been a market for a Marvel film before, because Kumail Nanjiani is from Pakistan. And like it's a strategic move, but it has benefits for not just the bottom line of the film, but also for the storytelling and then the opportunity that it gives people from different walks of life to step into the spotlight and do something that we haven't given them the opportunity to do before.
Right.
Right. Good stuff.
Do we want to move on and talk about some of the not so strong points?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah.
Okay. Can I go first?
Go for it.
This was sitting with me. Okay.
Yeah.
This movie was delayed a year.
I know.
Okay. Now, that being said, my beef is not that it was delayed a year. I mean, I'm disappointed that I had to wait this long, especially the way that it ended, and we're going to end up having to wait longer for more. But the post-credit scene with character Pip.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I believed that Thanos was a real person. Okay.
Right.
Like, I honestly believe that maybe they should start considering motion capture performances for major film awards, because Thanos was, to me, by far the best villain that the MCU had up until that point. And not only could you see the logic in his decision making, and you kind of like sympathized with him, but Josh Brolin's performance and the motion capture, the technology that they brought to it, I felt like Thanos was a real person. I forget that that's computer generated imagery.
Right.
This film being delayed a whole year, that character of Pip had no business looking as bad as it did.
I know.
Agreed.
I have to agree 100%.
That was like, it was jarring to see that level of like I would have thought, like, after a year it either looked really, really great or we just scrapped this.
Right. So, I have a sneaking suspicion that they were going back and forth to the last minute to figure out if they wanted to keep Pip as a character in there or cut him out completely. I just had a weird suspicion, because just like what you said, Kevin, I think the graphics weren't as great as what we usually see in MCU, but it also was kind of an odd thing to witness as well too. And if you play in your mind again, they could easily have taken Pip out of that scene without a whole lot of production with value with that and everything. So I think they're probably debating and probably still testing, like, do people respond to Pip or not? Like, is Pip going to be like a interesting character or a fun character to have, or is it way too much? So
my addition to that, my addendum, and I'll let you guys jump all over this, is that you remember the first time that we see Thanos in the movies, and he looks dramatically different by the time that he's like the actual
Barney
villain.
Purple. Yeah.
Let's hope that if Pip comes back in 3 years, that they've figured out a way to make him better.
Right.
I hope so.
Yeah.
There were so many, like, effects wise, there were so many things wrong with Thanos earlier in the movies. And what was it? I think it was in the Avengers at the like mid or post credit scene, whatever it was, with Thanos. I could not believe I caught this, but I was watching it, and there's this moment where he raises his hand and you see his face and it's Thanos, but he raises his hand and it's a human hand. It's not a great purple Titan hand. It's a man's hand. And I was like, what happened in post-production there?
Right. I'm going to go back and watch that now.
How did they miss this? And I had to rewatch the scene because I thought I was seeing things. And then I took a video and I sent it to my friends. And I was like, you guys are seeing this, right? This is a person's hand, not a Titan hand.
Right.
That's rough. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Kevin. I think that that mid-credit scene would have been a lot sweeter if a bunch of terrible people didn't tweet about it the second after they got out of the world premiere.
God.
But I still think it was a post-credit scene that fell flat. It still feels weird to me. It's still odd. when we are this far into phase 4, and I understand the connection that Eternals have with Thanos and Celestials, and I understand that family tree all fits together like it does, but we are now out of the Infinity Saga quite a bit, and we're moving forward, and then you're just like, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm the brother of Thanos. It's like, well, aren't we trying to go forward? Like, aren't we trying to like not do Thanos things? Because like we've already done Thanos things.
Well, if you think about the marketing of the movie and how much they pitched like the heroes of the Avengers, and then like comes the next great, like they were he's working off of his brother's name. Let's just put it that way. Like,
right. Yeah.
And I will tell you, having taken a 6-year-old girl to the movie, that was her favorite part. She lost her stuff. And she was
you know what?
jumping up out of her seat.
Right.
I'm sure there were 30-year-old women too. And I'm a huge fan of Harry Styles as a musician. And he's a good looking dude, but like my 6-year-old was just like fainting. So.
No, okay, I'm gonna be real honest. My friends and I, we lost our minds during that, because the scene happened, and my friend and I, we like grabbed each other's hands. We were like, oh my god, this is it. This is the moment.
This is happening.
And this is so embarrassing. I did not think this was gonna happen, but I cried. It was a mix of like laughing so hard because I was so excited.
Right.
And just the excitement of it, I had tears streaming down my face. And I was like, I can't believe I'm literally crying over like a 20-second scene of Harry Styles.
Yeah. I get the feeling like there's a lot of middle-aged men like me who like saw that scene and were like that TikTok trend where that voiceover is like, I don't like that. Do I like that? Like, Harry Styles in a space superhero suit or a superhero space suit. Sign me up.
You know what? He looked really good. He looked like the character. I think he's gonna do really, really well moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think people just like forget that he, has acting on his roster. Like it's not as if he made random little cameos in movies or TV shows, a one-liner here and there. Like, no, he's had proper roles in well-known movies like Dunkirk.
Exactly.
And he did really well in that movie. So I think people kind of forget that. And honestly, they could have done what some other movies have done and grabbed someone with absolutely no acting experience.
Right.
They could have easily done that, but they didn't. And it was a very tactical choice, of course, but I think in the long run, it's going to be
you talk about the diversity of the cast. They went through everything that they could check a box for, and they were like, wait a second, international pop star? Check.
Right. Yeah.
Need it.
That's the last one we need.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like, the only thing I know about Harry Styles is that he was part of One Direction, and that's about it. So when he showed up on the screen, I'm like, okay, like, I think it's just interesting to have that perspective. Like, I know nothing about this guy other than he was a really, just famous singer. True. And I'll be honest, like, just like what you said, Ellie, like, I'm like, I think he did it pretty well just in that, 20-second scene. Like, I thought I thought he looked good as Eros and that he's going to do a great job as him. So, yeah.
Agree. What I thought was going to happen was we would just see him. He would have maybe one line kind of earlier on when we first saw Thanos. We saw just like a glimpse of this new character. That's literally what I thought his appearance would be like. I completely didn't think he would actually have several lines to say. So I was super happy to kind of experience that too.
Right.
Yeah. My dude's already hitting on Athena. He's already trying to make his way.
I don't blame him.
It does seem fitting that it seems like Eros the character is a intergalactic pop star. Like he plays very much as an intergalactic pop star. Like he just walks around with mad charisma. He can talk to pretty much any lady in the room because he is who he is. And I would bet dollars to donuts that he shows up. He shows up like in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Peter Quill is like, man, not this again.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I love that.
I just got rid of Thor. Yeah.
I love that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Can I say something that didn't work for me? So
Yeah.
I think this is the second longest MCU film or next to Endgame, right? And I think it needs to be that long, but I also just think it was just too much. I think it's just too much story. Back to our conversation earlier, I don't think it would have benefited as a longer property like on Disney Plus or anything like that. I do think that we have gotten used to that. I think we had 8 hours to spend with Wanda and Vision. We had 6 hours to spend with Loki, and now we only have 2.5 hours to spend with 5 times the amount of characters. So I think that kind of plays into things a little bit, but it is also like, it's just so, I think they do a really good job of spanning time and these flashbacks, and we get good things from that. But because there are so many characters, you just lose this like really personal feeling that the movie is trying to go for and is trying to shoot for. You just don't have the space to dive in to that. And more, on the nose is whenever, kind of the halfway point when we get this, Arishem is kind of explaining what Eternals are, and we find out they're essentially like robots, right? They're not humans, and they were just like sent here, and they have their memories wiped, and all of that. I can understand the importance, but like I turned to my friend and I was like, that was a lot, and I'm not going to remember any of that. And honestly, I don't know if it benefits anything. Like I don't, outside of Thena's storyline, which is fine. It feels a little pushed, but like that doesn't matter at all. Essentially, we're spending an entire movie trying to humanize our Eternals, and then only to get told they're robots. And then it's like, well, wait, but I thought they feel human emotions, and like this is the storyline we're getting. So I don't think that worked very well. I think that was too much, and it could have definitely done without that. And then the final bit is, I know that for Marvel, our third act and our pinnacle of the movie is Endgame levels now, right? We get 45 minutes of a CGI battle. We get Shang-Chi, which is just 40 minutes of fighting dragons that don't really exist. This is better. This has a better final act than Shang-Chi. To me, it feels more personal and emotional. It's still a CGI fest. We're still watching, even though it's like really the only big battle of the movie, I think it works well. It's all this lava and fire and volcanoes and like that it took me out of like trying to comprehend why Sprite would stab Cersei. Like,
right.
I'm sorry, but I'm really focused on all of the lava that's really not adding anything to this scene. And so like, for me, I don't think we'll ever get away from that. I think this was a step in the right direction, but it is what it is. But it's just too much story.
Right. And I'll add on to that, in that I think there were, as great as the story is, I think there are problematic things about the storytelling piece of this movie that I think are, is the reason why, I kind of dinged it down some points. And some of it is that, going back to, Arishem, is there's just like little things that kind of bug me. Is like, it doesn't make sense, like why this happened. Right. And so like, for example, why did they wipe their minds if they created it? Like, it didn't make sense why Arishem like kept it from them if he programmed them all and everything like that, for that to be the responsibility. Like, there's just like little things like that. It's like, it doesn't make sense, the motivation, like why Icarus, what the group kept trying to stop Talmud, the Celestial that's being born, right? Like, why he just kept letting them try to stop them when, the whole time, he wanted it to happen. I felt very confused why the Deviants and Dane Whitman was in there to begin with. Like, I understand why Dane Whitman, because he's going to be, becoming the Black Knight later on. But like, if you took him out, the movie still made sense.
Yeah,
so
same thing.
Yeah, it's just, and Deviants, they were only really there to put in action scenes for the Eternals, right? Because I thought they would do something with Crow at the end, but Crow, gets killed off. And so it's like, okay, we have no Deviants. Like, it just seemed like really odd how they structured it. And so I think there's just a lot of issues with the motivation, explaining like why these things are happening. And I would say the last thing that I had an issue with is I wasn't completely sold on the Icarus Cersei romance. Like, when you do the flashbacks, I was sold on it. But then the whole, Icarus left, and then they were supposed to still like have these feelings for each other. I didn't really feel like that. I didn't feel that on the screen at all. And so I think it was something that was kind of lacking, that they needed to ramp that up a little bit more to really bring it home. So I think it was just a lot of little things that kind of add up to like, I wish they would have done that better, because it still doesn't make sense to me, like why these things happen. So
Can I make a counterpoint to that, Sean?
Sure.
With Cersei and Icarus. So I do think you're right. I think it works really well in the historical context of things, and not as much when he just like shows back up and they're like, why do we still love each other? But I think it's kind of in line with what we have been getting with phase 4 kind of, and maybe what Marvel's toying with a little bit more is not spoon feeding us really everything there is. And I think personally, I like the fact that they didn't tell us more than they told us. I think, sure, it could have benefited from it a little bit, but in my imagination, I get to create Icarus and Cersei's story. I get to determine why they left each other in the first place and where Icarus has been, and why all of a sudden they have these. That humanizes it more to me than if I were to understand maybe more like A, B, and C, and this is what happened. Because like, everybody's kind of been at some point in their life in whatever, a friendship or a relationship where maybe you have a little bit of regret, maybe you have a little bit of like missing or longing or something that you feel that you can connect with either Cersei or Icarus. And so I like that kind of imaginative part of it, but I think you're right. Like the runtime, it just kills any additional visual that you could get for that relationship.
Right. Yeah. I think I just wasn't sold on, even when they first see each other, like after so many years, like I didn't feel that zing of like, old lovers type of thing that you would expect for that sort of thing. So I wasn't expecting for all the details to be filled in, but I think it was just more the performance of that part, which is weird because they did a pretty good job in the historical part, but then that part, it just seemed like it was lacking. So
that's a good call out.
Maybe that's purposeful, because you get the sense that like Ethan's right. They didn't explain exactly why he walks away. Like, why did he leave?
Yeah.
And you get the sense that go ahead.
Sorry, but they did, because he said that once he found out the truth, that he had to stay away from her because he was afraid he was going to tell her.
Right. Well, yeah, but they leave that explanation for the very end, like because that's the mystery of of it all. Like you are left to like learn that you're left to discover that yourself as the truth is revealed. And so it does seem awkward when they first meet, and you consider like his intentions the whole time. Like he only shows up he knows the deviants are coming for them, and he only shows up I guess to save her, or maybe to see her one last time, because he knows there's impending doom. Kind of gives him a real creepster vibe, like, to me.
Somebody at Comic Watch I write for, somebody made a good point. Like he learned a brand new language just to get laid. So
right, he's putting in the work.
Right, which is like, that's not new, right? Like yeah. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good point.
I have to agree, though, that of what was wrong with the movie was just like a bunch of little things. Because I remember coming out of the movie, I was like talked to my friend about Cersei's character, and I made this like kind of passing comment about how she was kind of useless for most of the movie. I'm like, you have this really cool power, like you have this not just like a cool power, but a very useful, like, and you're in a sticky situation, like you can use your power to get out of it. And then she just doesn't use her powers until the last possible second. And that part, it bothered me so much, because you see all of our characters like using their powers, doing what they can to help the situation, and then she's just running. And then you get that moment when they're in the rainforest and she, figures out she can turn that one deviant into a tree. And then at the, very end of the movie, she turns Tiamat into
yeah.
the like stone, like to stone. And it's like there were so many times you could have done this before. Like, for example, when you were fighting the deviants or anything, but you didn't. And I'm like, I wonder if there was a reason for it. And that little bit missed its mark for me with her character, because I thought she was a really interesting character, and I liked the relationships that she had with a lot of the other characters, with Icarus, with Sprite, her her relationship with Dane, her relationship with Ajax. It was all very interesting. It was just when it came to her powers, though, I was like, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe the reason why she was so hesitant to use her powers, because of all of them, she was the one who embraced her humanity the most. Like, she just didn't, she wasn't as comfortable using her powers as everybody else was, because like she was the one that was most connected to like the human experience, and humans don't have powers like that. I will say that I was kind of hoping that they would say that she turned the Celestial into ice and not stone, because another glacier or another chunk of ice that big in the ocean would have like also helped global warming.
I know. I was like, that would have been perfect. But then
she saved the world twice.
Double.
That would have been amazing.
And if maybe they'll listen to this podcast and retcon that.
They'll be like, okay, change it. We're changing it, guys.
It's a special kind of ice that just looks like stone.
and then at the very end of Eternals 2, where there's like the special thanks, like I'll get that credit. Ice Celestial idea credited to special thank you to Kevin Stalker.
I think part of like Cersei's journey is that, though. I think her figuring out, I like your point about the humanity, Kevin. I think that's part of it, but I also think like she's the Eternal that doesn't really know, she doesn't really feel comfortable like being an Eternal. I think that's how she processes her guilt and any past trauma that she has, and any sense of like lack of confidence. Like, it could be a number of things. I think she just like that's how she deals with those things, is by basically saying like, I don't know what to do. I'm just not going to use my powers. And that definitely comes off. And I think initially like that comes off pretty choppy, and like, what are we doing? Like, why just use your powers? Like, it feels pretty MacGuffin like in terms of we're just like waiting for something big to happen. But also, like, when you look at it, hindsight's 2020, and you can see like Cersei doesn't understand it either. She is, as she's grieving and as she's processing her past relationship with Icarus, and as she gets closer to Icarus, she feels more confident, and she turns that deviant into a tree because she knows Icarus is trying to save her, and she feels some sort of love, right? And that's like her process of dealing with all of that. So yeah, I think it's way more layered, but it does, on a very like initial base, it comes off as like really weird.
Yeah.
Well, and that's art. Like, the director and the cast will probably be like, oh yeah, Kevin, you were right. That's exactly what we were going for. And everybody sees it. Everybody sees it a little bit differently, and to each their own.
Right.
Which is why you have to get out and see movies for yourself, and not just trust the review bombs. So
yep.
Do we want to talk about the end credit scenes? Do we want to just go ahead and give our ratings? How do we want to proceed from here? We're coming up on an hour.
I'm okay with talking about the end credit scene and then doing our ratings. So that, because I think we can keep that pretty short still. So I think we're good. Yeah. I
will say that for me, I would have rearranged some of the end of the movie with the end credit scenes. I would have inserted Dane Whitman finding the sword somewhere in the movie to tease it like Rhodey, tease it like Rhodey in Iron Man 1. He's like, next time, brother, next time.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. That would be cool.
And that would have been cool. And then I would have ended it with them in the park. I would have ended the end credit scene would have been them in the park talking to each other, and the clouds part, and there's a celestial there. I would not have had him gather them up into space and kidnap him. I would have just opened the clouds up to the celestial there and then left it like that. Because to me, that would have been more satisfying than to know that, oh, now they're captured and whatnot. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step further. I would have opened the clouds up and then you cut to Peter Parker over on a bench, and he goes, "Oh." Like right.
Oh
at the end
my
of it.
God, that would have been so good.
Because he was there. He was
Wow.
there like on another field trip. I don't know.
Unbelievable.
But
Love it.
but I just like that was the thing. That 2 minutes of the film where they get sucked up into space at the very, very end, and he's like, I've got you now. Like that for me was one scene too many, and part of the reason why like I didn't enjoy it as much. Right.
Well, and that whole thing with the serum was really weird because it's like he picked him up and then he's like, okay, I'll let this one slide. Like I just think that whole motivation, like it was really weird how the whole thing was leading up to a celestial being born, and then he's like, okay, I'll let it slide.
Right.
I'm come back. Like I just felt like it was really odd in general too. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and like that scene is so strange because he basically tells them like, you have decided to save humanity and I will check your memories to see if they are worth saving and I will be back for judgment. He doesn't say jack about the fact that they just blew a celestial being born. You're right. Like that's hard agree. Like one scene too many where you're just like, you took it one step too far and you tried to give us details that we didn't need. Can we talk about the post credit scene, the second post credit scene, real quick? Have you been notified? Are you aware?
Yes.
We all know who the voice was.
Yes.
Oh no, I don't.
Kevin,
Awesome.
I don't.
Okay.
Kevin
Sean,
doesn't know.
Sean, do you want to tell Kevin since this is your show?
Well, let me ask this, Kevin. Who do you think it is?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't have a guess. I immediately said, "Oh my God, who is that?" And
it is
no guess at all.
No guess.
No guess. Because I'll tell you who I thought it was.
My initial guess was that maybe that it was Mahershala Ali and that it was Blade.
Boom! Got
wow,
that's it.
Incredible. Well done. That's incredible.
Am
I really? Is that who you?
Yes, that's who it is.
It was confirmed. Yeah.
Holy moly!
Chloe herself confirmed that it's Blade.
Yes.
And Kumail Nanjiani went on another podcast and was like, I don't know if I can say this, but this is definitely what it is.
Yeah.
So good.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, so like I'll have to improve like the score that I give it at the end just off knowing that.
Just on that.
I mean, that's who I thought it was, to be honest with you. Like, but it was so fast.
It was.
And then it does.
Moment.
It takes a little bit of time to ruminate on it and come to that conclusion.
Well, because that whole scene, like you're waiting for him to pick it up and see what happens. And so you weren't expecting a voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of like threw me off guard. And because it was so quick, I didn't get time to process. And I'll be honest, like I thought it was Nick Fury because that's just something that Nick Fury does, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have to say something about people thinking it was Nick Fury, though. I'm like, this man has been with us for like 11 years. Yeah. Do you not recognize his voice?
Right.
Well, but again, because I wasn't expecting that to happen, it was so quick. Like, that's the only thing, like, and that's where my mind went to at first is like, is that Nick Fury? But then I was just like, that just doesn't make any sense. Why would it be Nick Fury? Because he was up on a spaceship, but it's like, whatever.
He's having the time of his life up there right now.
Yeah, he's just chilling. My man's just hanging out.
Which will kind of like that the whole setup though, like if what we now believe is true, two things. It's going to make the Blade that we know in the MCU very different. To me, will make him very different than the Blade we knew from previous iterations. But also, like, I just adjusted my Eternal score based on that information. I will adjust the score of the next film that they appear in if at some point in the MCU we do not get a montage of Blade teaching Dane Whitman how to fight with a sword.
Oh, please!
Like he's like, let me tell you something, brother. I know how to fight with a sword. I'm gonna show you the ropes. And then there's like the Rocky where Apollo is teaching Rocky how to chase a chicken on the beach. Like I need that in my life.
I think it definitely makes sense that it was him just because, like, comic wise, they're part of like MI13 and they kind of have their own team like they have and everything like that. But also I think too, like Kumail said, or Kingo said at some point in time, like somebody thought I was a vampire and like tried to stab me, and we got this really good like foreshadowing to vampires.
That's
and I was
true.
like, oh
that's
man,
true.
like
that's
that
true.
totally makes sense now. and I didn't catch on to that at all. I totally thought that post-credit scene was going to cut with him like opening the box and we didn't see what was inside, and I thought we were going to have to like wait to kind of see like what was going to happen, and I'm very excited.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, so
I'm just super stoked because it's Kit Harington. I'm like a big Game of Thrones person as well. So I was like Richard Madden and Kit Harington in the same movie.
Oh, the scene where they look at each other, where they meet each other and look at each other.
I lost
like
my
giggling.
mind.
I was giggling and Madden was like, "What's so funny?" I
was like, my brothers are meeting. No, that's literally my thought. I was like, my brothers are meeting again and they're having a great conversation.
Can I just say, like, between like Kit Harington and Kumail Nanjiani and Icarus, what's his actor's name?
Richard Madden.
Richard Madden. And Don Ho, who played Gilgamesh. Man, this has got like one of the best jaw lineups in the history of cinema.
Yeah,
like
next level.
Like my wife and I were watching old YouTube videos of Kumail before he like got into superhero shape, and it completely changed like his face. But like those jaws, like every single one of them looks like they were chiseled out of marble.
Oh my God. This cast is one of the best looking cast of heroes I have seen in a very long time.
Oh yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
Big time.
And there's even a chubby one with glasses, which made me feel really, really like strong about myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, real quick, to talk about Fastos or Fastos.
Yeah, that's right.
Fastos,
oh, is it Fastos? Okay, yes. Talk about Fastos. Has anyone picked up when he is like working on some sort of machinery in his house to help the Eternals, that it looked a lot like how Iron Man was building all of his stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Super into it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, and that's one thing I will say I find really interesting, I like about the movie, is that it seems like it's planting the seeds of like how Eternals have really inspired and shaped humanity in that way. And I think, that was kind of a call out to say like Iron Man got some of this technology from Fastos, cool. Who's known as the technology person, and like it's part of this, just part of this universe that like, it's a natural thing to happen because Fastos was involved with it somehow, indirectly or directly. So yeah.
That's tight.
Yeah, they were roommates at MIT.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love how they all like, these are my friends from college.
I know, so good.
That was a good joke.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we want to go around and just kind of give our last, like, how we rate the movie? And yeah, just last thoughts, I guess.
Sure. Are we rating out of 10? Is that the scale?
Yeah, let's go with 10. Kevin and I actually have never done that before, so
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
I give it 7 stars out of thumbs up. So
appropriate.
Yeah,
right.
We just like to mix and match our rating system on the show.
Yeah, there's a conversion chart somewhere, I'm sure.
Right.
I think for me, I finally, after I had sat with it for 2 days, I finally put it in my MCU rankings on Letterboxd, and I felt confident doing that. I currently have it set at number 4 out of 25 films. It is my 4th favorite film. And I'm going to stick to that, and I'm going to hold to that. So with that number 4 ranking, it's got to be like at least like an 8.8 or an 8.9. It's got to be up there quite a bit for me. I've got, Infinity War, Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home, and then I have Eternals, and then I have Black Panther to round out my top 5. So I think for me, I think it is so much more than the sum of its parts. I think that's the way that I view it. And I do think this discourse of people either not liking it or liking it and all of these problems and things, I think that makes me like it kind of more in like a really perverted way, where it's like, oh, good, this is like a chance to say like, no, this is actually what I really liked. And I like this about Marvel, and I want it to go in this direction. And I like Chloe Zhao, and I like the exposition, and I like this, that, and the other. Instead of just saying like different is bad and no thank you.
Right.
So yeah, I think overall it's sitting at number 4 for me, and I can't wait to go see it again. I'm going to try and go see it in IMAX, hopefully sooner rather than later. Loved it.
Definitely agree. I'm excited to watch it again. Immediately after, I was like, okay, when's round 2? When am I getting my second watch in?
Right.
But I'd have to say, like, I'd rate it, I think something like an 8 out of 10. Because I really liked it. Maybe even an 8.5. because even if there were small things that I found issues with, for the most part, they were things that I could easily forgive.
Mhm.
And I think I haven't ranked this movie yet of all my movies, but I feel like I could easily put it into top 10.
Right.
Easily. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I will say, I was thinking about this because I was actually listening to your podcast earlier today, Ethan, about this movie. And I gotta say, yeah. And I gotta say, I feel like for me, I would never be comfortable in ranking the MCU movies just because I feel like it's better for me personally to do ratings, because I feel like even if I were to rank the movies, I don't think it's really indicative of how good the movie is, right? Like I think everybody always talks about how Thor: The Dark World is a terrible movie, or is the I don't want to say terrible movie, how a lot of people say that it's the worst MCU movie. And I would say like it's definitely, probably at my bottom, but only because in comparison to all the other movies, like I still think Thor: The Dark World is a very good movie. It's just not as good as these other ones. So I feel like I always have a hard time to ranking them. I would never rank them, but I feel like rating them is good because then you could say like, these are all on par for different reasons that they're still very good. So for me, it's really weird because Kevin and I talk about how we were probably brothers separated at birth, because I also ranked it 7 out of 10.
Oh my gosh.
Since Sean and I share a hive mind, I had it at a 6.5 before you guys confirmed to me that it was Blade. So I'll give it a 7, and I will probably say, just like Sean, that it's probably in my bottom 5. For certain, the only ones that I know are that I like less are probably Hulk, Thor 2, and Black Widow. But like Sean said, like that's not a very good indicator, because I love the MCU movies. Like I think all of them, I think that it's great that we have something that that works the way that it does, that like everything is connected and there's this giant universe of characters. I will say this is going to be my parting shot. I will be willing to give it a higher score if on the Disney Plus release or the special features on the Blu-ray disc, if there are 2 or 3 fake trailers for Kingo movies,
oh yes, please.
I will definitely bump it up. Like when Tarantino did Grindhouse like 15 years ago, they had the fake trailers between the movies. I want 2 or 3 fake Kingo movies, but I also want them done in the style, like I want to see Kingo as his own grandfather, like in the 50s, like, and then I want to see him like in a 70s, movie where he's like flying through the air karate chop style, but like it's very like Bollywood, and you can tell like that it's super fake.
Right.
Yeah, no, I want all of that, and I'll rank it higher.
That's how they're gonna sell all those Blu-rays, man. That's where they're gonna get that home media money.
You can only get that here.
Yeah,
right.
It's a marketing tactic right there.
Genius.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our talk on the Eternals, I think. I want to say thank you to Ethan and Ellie for joining us today.
Yes,
before we go,
Thank
can both of you guys tell our listeners where they can find you online?
Absolutely. You can find me pretty much on every social media platform: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find me at Oh Shoot Podcast.
Nice. I'm primarily on Twitter. I am not on Instagram. At 15-minute Marvel. A lot of good Marvel memes, a lot of hot takes coming down the pipeline on a pretty constant basis. But give me a follow. It's worth it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I can confirm it's worth it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that wraps up another episode of The Caption Life. We hope you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on whatever major podcast platform you listen to. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Caption Life. And if you like what we're doing, give us a shout out, tag us in your post. For more info about us and all of our previous episodes, please visit thecaptionlife.com. Until next time, the Eternals will return.
Nice.